The story begins Vincent Kai didn't grow up wanting to be anyone's hero. In fact, he didn't want to be much of anything. Not out of hopelessness, but because he'd grown up surrounded by the kinds of people the world didn't clap for. People who made coffee at 4:30 a.m. People who lived paycheck to paycheck. People who taught him that being quiet wasn't the absence of power. It was its careful preservation. Small town, big quiet Vincent was born in the desert winds of Kingman, Arizona, a town where dust settled faster than dreams. His mother, Luella Kai, was the morning shift at the all-night diner and the bedtime storyteller, when she came home smelling like burnt bacon and cheap cologne. Use your eyes more than your mouth, she used to tell him. People will always show you who they are, but if you talk too much, you'll miss it. Vincent took that to heart, too well maybe. The silent kid, he was the quiet one in every room, not shy, just still observant. When kids shouted over who could climb the jungle gym fastest, Vincent sat under the slide, feeding ants with sugar packets from his lunchbox. When others laughed loud to belong, Vincent listened. Kids didn't get him. Adults didn't know what to make of him. Teachers assumed he had a speech delay. He didn't. He just didn't feel the need to fill silence for the sake of it. One substitute teacher once asked him, point blank in front of the class, "Vincent, do you speak?" Vincent just nodded. She never asked again. The bully and the sandwich in 5th grade, a boy named Connor Phelps, red hair, hot temper, bigger than the rest, decided Vincent was an easy target. Every day, Connor would throw something, a pencil, a spitball. Once a chocolate milk that exploded on impact, Vincent never responded, never ran, never even flinched. One day, Connor got up in his face and said, "Are you scared, mute boy? You too soft to even fight back." Vincent calmly opened his lunchbox, took out his peanut butter sandwich, and broke it in half. He placed half on Connor's desk and sat down. No words, no challenge, just kindness. Connor never bothered him again. Years later, Vincent the ghost in Hollywood. By 18, Vincent had moved to California. He didn't know what he wanted, but he liked motion, and the stunt world was built on motion, choreographed chaos. He got a job as a grunt for a stunt crew, drove props, fetched coffee, carried pads. His quiet demeanor made him invisible, which in Hollywood was both curse and superpower. One day, during a car chase shoot, the main stuntman sprained his ankle. Chaos erupted. Time was money. People were yelling. Vincent, in his work boots and worn jeans, calmly stepped forward. "I can do it," he said. The assistant director blinked. "You're the truck guy." Vincent nodded. "Still got legs." They laughed, but they let him try. He nailed it in one take. Built, not found, he never became famous, never wanted to, but behind the scenes, he became known as the stunt ghost. He worked clean, kept to himself, helped injured crew get home, donated anonymously to their recovery funds, listened more than he spoke. Eventually, someone made a meme out of him, a candid photo of Vincent carrying a stint woman to an ambulance after a pyrotechnic accident with the caption, "Who is this guy?" That was the beginning of the public curiosity, the kindness that rippled years past. Vincent kept working, quietly supported foundations, spoke at juvenile detention centers, not with motivational speeches, but with open ears. Sometimes, just sitting with a kid who hadn't had someone listen in years. He never sold his story, never started a podcast. But one day, a child he'd mentored wrote an essay titled, "The Quietest Man I Ever Knew Taught Me to Fight Without Fists." That went viral. Producers came calling. The invitation, he said no, dozens of times. But one letter stood out. It was handwritten. It came from a production assistant, not a host. She said, "I think people need to hear what you're not saying." That line stuck. So, he agreed. And that's how Vincent Kai ended up sitting across from Gina Delacroix, in a studio where every camera wanted him to trip up, tear up, or blow up. Instead, he sat there still. Flashback ends. Present returns in the studio. Gina leaned forward. "You really believe silence can be powerful?" Vincent smiled softly. "Gina, silence has kept me alive and helped others find their voice. I'd say that's power enough." The internet would go on to call it the kindness clapback. Memes flooded every social platform, but none of it mattered to Vincent. What mattered was the letter he received a week later from Connor Phelps. I was the bully. You were the lesson. I finally get it now. Elijah, Kai, the fire in the family Elijah, was 2 years older. Loud where Vincent was quiet, wild where Vincent was watchful. He had a laugh that could rattle windows and a heart that made grown-ups cry. He once got suspended from school, not for fighting, but for jumping between a 6th grader and a teacher who was about to be hit with a flying chair. They're not bad, Elijah had told the principal, just tired of not being heard. He was that kid, the bridge between chaos and calm. Vincent's protector, interpreter, and best friend. They were inseparable, yin and yang, sunlight and shadow, peanut butter and the napkin you forgot to bring. Where one went, the other followed. The night everything changed, they were walking home from a corner store on a Friday night. 2 sodas, 1 bag of chips. It was a ritual. The neighborhood was rough, but not impossible. You just learned the rhythms, who to avoid, where not to linger, when not to make eye contact. That night, they turned the wrong corner. Or maybe the wrong car turned into theirs. Either way, it was over in 3 seconds. Pop, pop, pop. 3 gunshots. A silver sedan. A teenage blur of fear, mistakes, and something Vincent would later learn was a gang initiation gone wrong. Elijah pushed him down. The last thing Vincent heard before the silence was Elijah's voice. Stay low. Hospital. Silence. Elijah died on arrival. Vincent never left the waiting room. His mother Luella showed up still in her diner uniform. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped her keys 3 times. She didn't ask questions. She didn't yell. She just wrapped Vincent in her arms and whispered, "You come back to me. That's all that matters." But Vincent didn't come back. Not fully. Not for years. The urge for revenge. The neighborhood knew who did it. People talked in whispers. Some even asked Vincent outright, "You gonna get him back?" He was 9, and he almost did. He found a wrench in the garage. It felt heavy, right, like justice. He walked to the edge of the block where the shooter's cousin lived, the hangout spot. He saw a boy laughing on the porch, the same face from the sedan, and then he saw the boy's little sister run up and hug him, and Vincent froze, because in that moment, he realized something he never forgot. Everyone is someone's little brother. He dropped the wrench in the gutter and walked away. Therapy, sort of his mother, couldn't afford real therapy. So she did the next best thing. Every Saturday, they sat in the kitchen, made tea, and she asked him one question. "What did you feel this week?" At first, Vincent gave nothing. Shrugs. Fine. Nothing. Silence. But over time, he started answering one word at a time, sometimes with a drawing, sometimes just a memory. One week he said, "Cold." When she asked why, he said, "Because Elijah isn't loud anymore." It wasn't healing, but it was something. And something is where healing begins. Journaling the pain by age 12. Vincent was keeping notebooks, not full sentences, not poetry, just fragments. He called them thought bones. Things like, being angry feels powerful, but it's still being controlled. Elijah laughed like he knew the ending of every sad story. Why do we lose the ones who speak the most truth? Is silence louder when you want to scream? He didn't write for therapy. He wrote because no one else seemed to listen. To the quiet moments, and those were the ones he lived in. Volunteering, where broken people go before teen, Vincent started volunteering at a local youth shelter. He said he just wanted community service credit. That was a lie he was looking for. Echoes. For people who knew what grief felt like without saying the word, there he met Marcus. 16. A former gang runner who taught him how to shuffle cards like a Vegas dealer, and Joelle, 15, who hadn't spoken in 2 years, but started humming when Vincent sat beside her. He didn't fix them. He didn't try to. He just sat with them. The way Elijah used to sit with him after nightmares, a promise made on the day that marked 3 years since Elijah's death. Vincent stood in the middle of an old basketball court with peeling paint and broken rims. He looked up and whispered, "I won't be loud like you, but I'll make you proud." That was the beginning of his mission. He didn't know what it would look like yet, but it would be quiet, consistent, and absolutely unstoppable. Chapter 1. The background blur. Vincent started on low-budget sets, mostly indie action flicks with one-word titles like Impact, Shatter, and Bloodline. At first, he didn't do stunts. He was the guy who reset the pads, coiled wires, and fetched burritos for the wire riggers. But he watched. everything. Quiet, meticulous. He studied the footwork of fight choreographers, memorized timing cues, understood how to fall better than anyone else, because he'd been doing it metaphorically since he was 9. Within a year, he started doubling for actors too scared to jump from mild heights. Within 2, he was doing car flips and high falls, usually without anyone even knowing his name. The fireball the scene was simple on paper. Interior, car crash. Driver escapes. Explosion. Vincent had rehearsed it 5 times with the coordinator. Everything was timed. The burst, the angle, the foam fire retardant system. But during the actual take, something went wrong. Very wrong. The foam failed. A flammable prop ignited too early. The driver, stuntwoman Sierra King, was supposed to roll out just before the blast. She didn't make it. Vincent saw it from 20 feet. Away, most people froze. Some screamed. Vincent ran. He didn't think. Didn't wait for permission or protective gear. He jumped the railing, kicked through a stuck door, and dragged Sierra out, her suit smoking, face bleeding, eyes dazed by the time medics arrived. Vincent was sitting beside her, patting her shoulder, repeating the same words over and over. You're here, you're here, you're here. The next day Vincent sat in the hospital lobby for 8 hours. No one asked him to stay. No one really noticed he hadn't left. When Sierra woke up, she reportedly said, "Did you really run into fire for me?" Vincent replied, "You would have done it too, if the fire had picked me." That quote made its way around the industry. Not because he shouted it, but because a nurse wrote it in a blog post that went viral. The envelope 2 weeks later, a courier dropped off an envelope on set. No name, no return address. Inside, it was a handwritten letter. "I've worked with 100 tough guys and only 1 actual man. You didn't save the day. You saved me. Thank you, Sierra." Folded into the note was a check. Vincent never cashed it. Instead, he started a fund in Sierra's name for stunt performers without insurance. The accidental speaker a few months later, Vincent got asked to speak at a local college's film department. They were studying the behind-the-scenes lives of crew workers. He agreed reluctantly. It wasn't glamorous. A dozen sleepy students in folding chairs, 1 over-enthusiastic professor, and a mic that crackled every few seconds. Vincent stood up, adjusted the mic, and said, "I don't have a speech, but I have a story." He told them about Sierra, about the car, the heat, the moment he moved without thinking. And then he said something he didn't even know he believed until he said it. We don't get to pick our spotlight, but we can pick our reaction when it finds us. The room went silent. Then one student, in the back row, raised their hand and asked, "Have you always been brave?" Vincent paused, then smiled. "No, just practiced at being scared." The green room revelation 6 months later, while sitting in the green room before a small podcast interview, he looked at himself in the mirror, not like a man preening, but like someone taking inventory. He didn't see a celebrity. He saw a man with calloused hands, burned scars on one arm, and a heart still carrying his brother's laugh. And he thought, this is what legacy feels like. Quiet, but warm. He never wanted to become a symbol, but sometimes symbols don't ask for volunteers. They rise out of moments too big to ignore. Flashback. What Sierra taught him, they stayed friends. Sierra, bold and brilliant, taught him how to take up space. Not with volume, but with presence. "You don't have to fill the room, Vincent," she told him once. "Just anchor it." She pushed him to say yes more, to step into spaces that used to scare him. Not because they were unsafe, but because they were unfamiliar. He learned to speak, not to convince, but to connect. Defining purpose one night, Vincent wrote 3 lines in his journal. Purpose isn't a speech. Purpose isn't a brand. Purpose is a fire. And we choose whether to run from it or through it. That night, he decided he wouldn't seek the camera. But if it found him, he wouldn't flinch. He'd just tell the truth, quietly, calmly, completely. The setup the show was called Unfiltered, hosted by Gina Delacroix, equal parts wit, controversy, and caffeine. She was famous for grilling guests, like a hibachi chef, politicians, celebrities, activists. No one got through without a few burn marks. Vincent's first thought, why me? His second, I don't belong there. But Sierra, remember her, fiery in every sense, texted him just one word, go. So he did. The producers tried to coach him. Keep your answers tight, don't ramble. Don't be too zen, say something bold. He just nodded and sighed. He was thinking, what if bold is just being calm in a room full of hot takes? The green room was cold, the makeup chair was awkward, and he hated the way the mic wire tugged at his collar. But when the countdown hit 3, 2, 1, Vincent Kai straightened his spine, breathed in, and stepped into the fire. The interview, unfiltered and unexpected, it started as expected: zingers, traps, baited questions, but Vincent didn't bite. When Gina asked if his philosophy of forgiveness was just emotional pacifism, he responded, no, it's emotional blacksmithing. You heat it, hit it, and shape it into something useful. When she asked if he was afraid of picking a side, he said, I picked a side a long time ago. I stand with people trying to heal. By minute 6, the audience wasn't laughing at Gina's quips anymore. By minute 8, the entire studio was quiet, leaning in, and then came the firefighter line. It wasn't planned, it just came out, clean, unapologetic, and that was it. The fallout: the clip hit 17 million views in 2 days. Twitter called it the nicest verbal uppercut in TV history. People made t-shirts, GIFs, Spotify playlists with titles like Firefighter, Vibes Only. But not everyone was impressed. One op-ed called him spiritually manipulative. Another said he was a mascot for passive resistance in a time that demands rage. And one very sweaty YouTuber in a car rant claimed, this guy is what happens when Mr. Rogers joins a dojo. Vincent didn't respond to any of it. He spent the next morning cleaning the local youth shelter's bathroom because he promised Joelle, now 18, thriving, humming again, that he'd show up every Thursday. And viral fame didn't excuse him from toilets. The backlash: 2 sponsors pulled out of a charity event. He was scheduled to host. A podcast rescinded their invitation. A college student called him a soft-spoken enabler. But then the letters started coming. Letters from the quiet majority. A veteran wrote, I used to believe my PTSD made me weak. You showed me stillness is strength. A 14-year-old kid from Detroit wrote, I used to yell to feel powerful. Now I listen. It's harder, feels better. A single mom wrote, my ex calls me too forgiving. Thanks for reminding me that grace isn't defeat. Vincent read them all, kept them in a shoebox, marked proof. He never replied, but he did write a new journal entry. Maybe the world doesn't need another warrior. Maybe it needs a witness. The true aftermath of fame didn't change Vincent. It just clarified something. The world wanted punchlines, but it needed pause. He didn't need to go viral to matter. But now that he had no interest in trending, only in teaching. The invite that changed everything: 2 weeks later. A small nonprofit college reached out. We don't have a big platform, but we have a big problem. Students are burning out, trying to be right all the time. Would you be willing to just talk to them? Vincent accepted, not because it was flashy, but because it wasn't. Corporate doors closed. Brands that had quietly approached him before. Small sponsorships, motivational campaigns, coffee table book ideas started ghosting him. One company that had offered him $30,000 for a mindfulness series sent a cold, forward email. Not the right fit. Why? Because Vincent didn't fight back, didn't engage the culture war, didn't do the internet dance of outrage versus outrage. He just kept speaking softly. And for some, that wasn't good television. The viral debates on social media. Vincent's face became a litmus test. His quotes turned into memes, some honoring, some mocking, supportive. Empathy is muscle. Vincent Kai trained daily, mocking. Let's all just be nice and evil. Was stop Vincent. Kindness term kindness trended for 48 hours. Some meant it sincerely, others as sarcasm. Vincent didn't respond because he wasn't trying to win a debate. He was living a life. The moment he almost quit the shelter office was quiet that Thursday. Rain tapped against the windows. Vincent was folding donated clothes when Joelle, now a staff volunteer herself, walked in. She held out her phone. Have you seen this? It was a video. A former friend, someone Vincent had once helped out of addiction, now selling a podcast story titled Vincent Kai, Real Saint or Silent Narcissist. The thumbnail showed Vincent's face, photoshopped onto a statue, cracked and crumbling. Vincent watched the first 20 seconds, then turned the phone off. He didn't speak for a long time. Then quietly, I just wanted to help." Joelle sat down next to him. "No," she said, "you still are." The envelope that changed it all the next day, a battered envelope, arrived. At the shelter, no return address, no postage, just the name. Vincent inside was a note, written in pencil, all capital letters. "I'm 14. I scream a lot because I don't know how not to. I saw your video, tried breathing instead. I didn't break anything today, just wanted you to know." Vincent held the letter like it might dissolve. That night, he wrote in his journal, "Let them burn down opinions. I'll keep lighting candles." The college invitation, yes, that college, remember the tiny nonprofit college from part 4, they followed through. And they didn't want a show, they wanted a conversation. Vincent showed up in jeans and a black t-shirt, no mic, no podium, just a chair and a ring of students. He asked them the first question. "What's something you wish the world understood about you, but doesn't?" One by one, they spoke, some for the first time, some with shaking voices, some with tears. Vincent just listened. For 90 minutes, he said almost nothing. When it was over, one student whispered, "That felt like the first time I've ever been heard." The pivotal debate, live and ugly, he couldn't avoid it forever. Eventually, a network begged him to debate an internet provocateur live, someone known for screaming matches and turning nuance into napalm. Against his better judgment, Vincent agreed. Why? Because silence is powerful, but so is choosing the right time to speak. The debate started hostile. The host pounded him with accusations. "You're naive, you're privileged, you're soft." Vincent waited, breathed, then calmly said, "I've buried my brother, carried a woman out of fire, listened to addicts cry about their kids, held the hand of a veteran who forgot his own name. If that's soft, I hope the whole world goes soft." Silence, then applause, then chaos, but the good kind. The kind that makes people whisper, "Wait, maybe there's another way." The real win. Vincent didn't trend the next day. Someone else did, a celebrity divorce or a rapper's feud. It didn't matter. What mattered was the note slipped into his coat pocket after the debate. No name, just 4 words. "You made me stay." The story begins. Vincent wasn't trying to launch a movement. He was just trying to clean up after the one that tried to tear him down. But something happened after the firestorm. People stopped watching him and started listening. The first ripples started in places that didn't make headlines. A cafeteria manager in Detroit printed Vincent's quotes on lunch trays. A middle school counselor in Iowa used his interview clips to start morning check-ins. A barbershop in Atlanta turned the phrase "empathy takes muscle" into a mural behind their chairs. Nobody called it a movement, but something was moving. The notebook, Project Vincent, began receiving emails from teachers asking if he had any resources for young men who didn't know how to process emotions, especially without yelling or punching lockers. He didn't have a curriculum, but he had journals. He photocopied old entries, raw, unpolished, real. Thoughts like, anger is loud because it's afraid. Being seen is scary, but being invisible is worse. I'm not broken, I'm just heavy. He packaged them into PDF booklets, called it the Notebook Project, made it free. Within 3 months, over 12,000 downloads. The critics fizzle out. Funny thing about firestorms, they burn themselves out after a while. People stopped trying to cancel him because he wouldn't argue, he wouldn't clap back, he'd just keep showing up to hospitals, to shelters, to classrooms. Eventually, even his critics ran out of fuel. One former hater, a radio host, actually invited him on his show again, agreed not to gloat, to listen. And in a surprising twist, the host apologized on air. "You're not what I thought you were." "You're better," Vincent replied. "We all are." Once we stopped trying to win, the TED-adjacent talkie got invited to speak at a leadership conference. No flashy slides, just a stool and a mic. He told stories, not about his fame, but about the forgotten. A night shift nurse who sang to dying patients. A garbage collector who saved a kitten and ended up with 3. A 6-year-old boy who forgave the kid who broke his favorite toy. Vincent said, "We've built a culture where we only applaud people who shout. But it's the people whispering in the chaos who keep the world turning." One audience member, a CEO, left crying. She later started a company-wide pause hour every Friday. No emails, no meetings, just 60 minutes to reflect, think, and listen. A letter that shook him. A package arrived at Vincent's tiny apartment. Inside, a neatly folded military uniform, a purple heart, and a note. You never met my son, but he watched your video the night before his deployment. Said you reminded him that stillness isn't surrender. He didn't come back. But I wanted you to know he believed, and I do too. A gold star. Mother. Vincent wept. For the first time in years, he let it break through. Not because he was weak, because he wasn't pretending to be strong anymore. The door that opened. A small studio approached him. Not a major production house, but one run by two brothers from his hometown. They said, "We want to create a series, not about you, but about what you sparked. Real people, real stories." Quiet acts of courage? He said yes. The series would be called Still, a weekly profile on everyday heroes. Bus drivers, hospice workers, foster dads, first-time mothers. Vincent would narrate, not star. The movement takes shape without planning it, without naming it. People started calling it the Stillness Movement. Not a religion, not a brand, not even a non-profit, just a way of being. Schools started still spaces, rooms where kids could decompress without shame. Prisons implemented Kai sessions, peer-led circles based on silence and listening. Police departments began using pause protocols designed to diffuse rather than escalate. Vincent kept his head down, still volunteered Thursdays, still walked Joelle's dog when she worked late. The story begins. Vincent Kai never liked the word retire. To him, it sounded like giving up, or worse, going silent in a world that still needed his voice. But after a decade of quietly shaping lives, he wasn't retiring, he was passing. The mic, the legacy, begins without him. By now, the stillness movement had taken root in over 40 countries, not because of branding, not because of influencers, but because it worked. A single mom in São Paulo ran community Kai circles for teenagers with anxiety. A retired prison guard in Montana helped launch a re-entry program built on pause before punishment. Teachers in Tokyo began whisper mornings, where students started the day with 10 minutes of calm. Reflection. Vincent didn't lead these projects. He inspired the first whisper. The rest was echo. The box under his bed in his small home. Near the edge of Joshua Tree, Vincent kept a weathered shoebox under his bed. Inside, dozens of letters from janitors, soldiers, foster kids, social workers, wristbands from shelters and community centers, a folded photo of him and Elijah as kids, peanut butter on their faces, world still whole. He didn't display these things, he visited them the way some visit graves or galaxies. Joelle's graduation. Remember Joelle? The silent girl who hummed instead of speaking? She graduated with a degree in social work. Her cap read, he listened. So now I do too. She invited Vincent to her ceremony. He stood in the back row, no camera, no speech, just pride dressed in denim. After the ceremony, she found him. You were the first adult who didn't talk over me, she said. Vincent just smiled. You had a song in you. I just made space. The letter from Gino years after their viral interview. Gina Delacroix, the once cynical host who tried to debate him into submission, sent a letter. It read, I don't know what I was trying to prove that day, but I know what you proved, that gentleness isn't weakness, that I didn't need to win, I needed to learn. Thank you. I listen differently now. He placed it in the box. A life well sat with Vincent, aged the same way he lived. Quietly, he never sought accolades, but they found him anyway. The Stillness Movement was nominated for a humanitarian prize. A university created a Kai scholarship for first-gen students who serve in their communities. A coffee shop in New York created a Vincent table, reserved every Saturday for people who need to talk to someone who will just listen. Never visited the shop. He loved knowing it existed. A speech he never gave, but was heard anyway on what would have been Elijah's 40th birthday. Vincent sat down and wrote a speech. He didn't deliver it. He left it in a notebook marked Legacy. Here's part of it. We're all carrying someone, their memory, their lessons, their voice. My brother taught me how to be loud. Life taught me when to be quiet. But the world taught me something even bigger. You don't have to shout to matter. You don't have to shine to lead. You don't even have to be right. You just have to be present. That's how the world begins to heal. Final scene in his final days. Vincent wasn't surrounded by press or admirers. He was surrounded by people he helped, not with fanfare, but with quiet presence. Joelle visited weekly. Sierra, now running a foundation for injured stunt performers, called him her safety net. Marcus, the former gang member turned counselor, came to read to him. And when he passed peacefully, with the desert wind outside his window, there was no headline, just a whisper. 1 year later at the first Stillness Conference, from 31 countries gathered, no one spoke on stage for the first 5 minutes. They sat in silence. Then, a speaker read from Vincent's last journal, "The loudest sound I ever made was the life I lived." Final note: Vincent Kai never conquered the world. He listened to it. He sat with it. He hurt with it. He served it without noise, without needing to win, without needing to be known. And somehow, in doing so, the whole world heard him anyway.